get into our last piece. This is NCAA football. We got to start off with the one that really shook up the nation for several different reasons, and that is when Michigan beat number 2 Ohio State 13-10. So I did watch. You watched it. We watched the entire game. I mean, there's the strangest parts about the whole thing is I looked up. They had almost the exact same amount of plays, almost the exact same amount of yards. Close to the same earned time with their time of possession. Michigan was a little bit more, but Michigan had 100 more yards on rushing, and probably the one stat that really stuck out, Ohio State kicker, he was 1 for 3.
Yeah.
If he would have made both of those, they would have won that game, and they weren't that hard at kicks. The only thing I can attest to this is this. Michigan's defense, for whatever reason, stepped up enormously in that game. They stopped him. They stopped him consistently. But it was also Ohio State offense did not play Ohio State offense. I mean, so I think it was a little bit of both. But, I mean, it was interesting to watch Ohio State's offense really just kind of fall apart. They just weren't getting anywhere. The amount of yards that both teams had were under 300 yards.
I mean, what really stands out to me is, that was at Ohio State Stadium. Ohio State is number 2 in the nation, at the time. And Michigan has been having an awful season by their standards, barely breaking even. How does it seem as if, all of these factors that come into play didn't rattle Michigan one bit when it comes to defense? Why does it seem like Ohio State was the one who felt all of the pressure on their shoulders for this big game? I mean, I know these are, 18 to 22-year-olds, but that's the type of game where you would expect the momentum, the home stadium, just the bigness of the moment to sink in on a team like Michigan. And it really didn't seem to happen. That was a rough and rugged defensive game pretty much all the way until the end. I mean...
And people always use that analogy of where teams will go in expecting a team to be worse than what they are, and so they just kind of shrug it off. I don't know if there's truth to that. I don't really see that with being an Ohio State team. They walk in and say, well, Michigan's 6-5, we'll be fine. I think they knew it was going to be a tough game. But
I mean, it's the game.
And they have, that's one, too, where if you want to make it, I don't know what this is going to do. You don't know exactly how this is going to affect the playoff bracket. You assume that they're going to stay in, but now they're not playing for the Big Ten championship.
Yeah.
So Oregon and Penn State are going to be playing now because of that loss. And I think Ohio State deserved another shot at Oregon. I really do, because they almost had them the first time. And I would have loved, nothing against Penn State, but I would have loved to seen an Ohio State-Oregon Big Ten championship. I really would have. I think it would have been a fun game to watch, but I don't know. I can't say necessarily what's going to happen, but you think probably they're going to get in. I think we'll know Sunday.
Yeah,
what the bracket's going to look like.
I looked up a projected thing for it, and it says they're still in. It now moves them to the 8th spot, so they're at the 6th seed total. And they would be taking on Tennessee now, which means Georgia bumps down to take on IU.
Yeah, but that all depends on what happens in the
championships. Yep. But that's if it were to end today.
Yep.
And somehow SMU has one of the bye weeks, and Boise State has one of the bye weeks.
I don't know. You went off on that last week.
That's just crazy. That's crazy to me.
But... Yeah. You want to talk about what happened at the end of the game?
Well, you know what? Let's leave that for the third topic. That was entertaining.
The one thing I will say is, even though Michigan did beat Ohio State, Michigan did fire their offensive coordinator today.
Yeah.
So 3 days after the big win, they let the offensive coordinator go. There must have been something that wasn't meshing well.
I'm sure that was a season-long type of thing. It's probably one of those things where... they knew that he was going to get fired at the end of the season just because of the performance of the entire season. So,
yep. I think kudos to them for doing it, because you would think after a big win that might put some pressure on them to keep him.
Yeah.
But if it's a season-long thing, not a one-game thing. I mean, honestly. And they only scored 13, so it's not like they're racking up the points.
The offense was not good.
Second point, we just kind of mentioned what's going on with the bracket. I at least wanted to talk about the championship games. With Ohio State losing and then Miami lost as well, that shakes up that entire playoff bracket. We don't know exactly what it's going to look like, but it did affect those championship games. So, coming up this weekend, we got the Mountain West Championship, UNLV versus Boise State.
Boise State already beat UNLV earlier this season. So, this is a rematch for UNLV. We'll see if they can do something to Boise State's spot in the bracket.
Exactly. That'll change things. American Athletic Championship, you got 17 Tulane at Army. Army's not ranked because of that loss against Notre Dame, but they're still up there, and I don't think they're going to find themselves in a playoff position, even if they win this. But Big 12 Championship, you got number 18 Iowa State at number 16 Arizona State.
I'm hoping for an upset here. I don't like seeing Arizona State in the bracket. I need them to take an L.
Yeah, it'll be interesting to see who wins that, where they land, and if they even get in. I mean, there's still a question if they do. I don't know how all this works, but Georgia's still in that conversation, even if they happen to, which is the next one. Number 7, Georgia at number 3, Texas.
Yeah.
Tough game. If Georgia loses, does that throw them out of the bracket? Some are arguing, nope, they're good enough to stay in.
Yeah. I mean, that's going to be tough. They're already are talking about a lot of these SEC teams with 3 losses. Maybe potentially one of them can still get in the bracket.
Sure.
If Georgia loses to Texas, which Texas has only lost once this year, maybe they could be the team that still gets in with a 3-loss record.
Right. And what happens if Georgia beats Texas? I mean, Texas obviously is number 3, so they would still stay in the playoff, I'm sure, but where does that adjust everybody? Everybody's going to be moving all over the place.
Yeah, somebody's going to move up to that bye week spot for sure.
We already said Big Ten Championships, number 4 Penn State at number 1 Oregon. Again, I would have loved to see Ohio State there because I think it would have been a better game, but maybe Penn State will surprise us. I don't know. I haven't seen a lot of their games this year, but it's at Lucas Oil, so no one really has the advantage. Maybe Penn State will probably travel a little bit better than Oregon just because it's not as far, but we'll see.
I think Oregon, man, they're like last year's Georgia. I don't think there's any topping them.
Yep. And then the last one, which will be an interesting game, ACC Championship. You got number 12 Clemson at number 9 SMU.
That's the game to watch.
If Clemson can pull this off, that will really affect the bracket.
Yep.
And I don't know what will happen to SMU. That might throw them out, honestly.
Yep. I mean, we'll have to see. Maybe it can give a bump to Clemson. Maybe Clemson can have a shot at getting in it.
Yep. So, and like we said, after all these championships, ESPN will be hosting it, but it'll be Sunday night that they'll announce the official brackets. And then, I'm assuming the games start the following weekend, right?
I think so.
Yeah. Because they're going to have to work it up towards the championship, which will be in January.
I just hope that whatever way that this bracket shakes up, I'm rooting for IU, and I would hate to see IU going up against Georgia first round. I mean, that's a really tough matchup early on.
But I don't know who do you give them, or it won't be a tough round.
I mean, out of the matchups that are in here, like SMU right now currently has the bye week. I would rather see IU take on SMU. I would rather see IU take on a Boise State, maybe even an Arizona State. Really just stay away from the SEC teams.
Yeah.
Don't face on any of them. I probably don't want to see them take on a Penn State or an Oregon, which if Oregon, even if they lose, they're probably still going to have the bye week.
Yeah.
But really just any team that's not an SEC team, maybe even Notre Dame. Like, I would probably rather take Notre Dame than a Georgia or a Tennessee or, like I said, Texas. That'd be rough.
Or they walk in and play really well and, shock the world and beat an SEC team. I mean, it's not like it couldn't happen because they've had some good games this year and they didn't play well against Ohio State at all. So what would happen if they did play well and played like their normal self? So could happen.
Yeah, maybe they get a Ohio State rematch in the first round.
Could.
We'll have to see. But let's get into the last topic for NCAA. Now, this was rivalry week. and you could feel
Yes.
it was rivalry week.
Yes, you could.
There was flag planting fights all over the place, okay? So the one I think most of the nation watched, Michigan and Ohio State. Michigan player goes to plant their flag in the O, and Ohio State was not having that. Ended up ripping the flag out of his hand. You know, they freaking were just pushing and shoving at the middle of the field. Police came out. Pepper spray was sprayed. Now, I think I saw a thing where the police were saying that there was some people who fell on the ground who weren't players wearing pads and stuff. So they began pepper spraying people so that they wouldn't get trampled on. So, I mean, listen.
That's insane to me. I go ahead.
It's a crowd, and you only have so many.
A crowd of players.
Yeah, a crowd of players, obviously, but you don't want someone getting hurt who's not in pads. And if you look at the crowd, if you were watching it, even with some of the cops, there was some 5'3", 5'4" females out there. And these are big 6'3", 6'4", 300-pound linemen pushing and shoving each other. If just one of those players steps on an arm, it snaps like a twig. So if I'm some 60-year-old cop who's just there on a security gig and you're getting shoved with these 300-pound linemen, I'm probably going to pull out the taser gun and start just tagging everybody around me. Just back up. Pepper spray there. I saw a lot of the Michigan players rushing to the sideline, pepper spray on their eyes, watering it out and stuff. They're not going to die, but it was chaotic. It was chaotic at the end of that game.
I'll make my point towards the end. Let's talk about the rest of them.
So the other games where we had flag planting fights specifically. NC State and North Carolina. NC State beat them, tried to plant their flag once again. Flag gets snatched, ran off the field. Players shoving, pushing each other. Got pretty violent. Florida versus Florida State. Also flag planting, also very violent, pushing and shoving post-game. And then Arizona State and Arizona, which Arizona State beat them, which I forgot to say Florida beat Florida State, obviously, too. But Arizona State beat Arizona. Flag planting, gets vicious, gets pretty violent at the end. Here's some honorable mentions just for rivalry week fights, okay? BYU beat Utah, and so with about 2 minutes and some change left, BYU scores again, which Utah didn't like, so they get to shoving each other in the end zone. Gets pretty aggressive. Notre Dame beat USC, and there was a play specifically where a Notre Dame offensive lineman shoved an SC player to the ground and ended up
punching him, right?
Blasting him in his helmet. Just shoves him in the ground. It was kind of like a pancake block, I'd guess. And then it just boop right in his face.
Caught right on the camera. I mean, I watched it live when it happened. I'm like, I don't think you can do that. I think you can just punch people.
There was no penalty called. No penalty. It's just rivalry week. It's normal. Alabama beat Auburn. Now, there was a wide receiver and a cornerback who were scuffling up against each other at the end of the game, and it got shoved into the sideline, and then crowds of players come over, try to break it up. And then finally, which was probably my favorite one of all of rivalry week, the Arizona State versus Arizona mascots. They were duking it out. They were throwing haymakers at each other. I mean, the helmet thing that they were wearing, I guess, got twisted sideways. And, right after that play, I believe, Arizona State threw it in for a touchdown, right after the fight got broke up.
Wow.
So, I mean, great rivalry week. I absolutely love the intensity. College football's back. I love that. I know everyone that you saw on ESPN and all the sports channels are like, oh, this is a disgrace to football. It was a great game until after the game where they just showed all these classless acts. No, this is what the fans want, all right? If we could treat this like hockey and just go ahead and let them duke it out for a little bit, give them some penalty minutes afterward, I'd be completely fine with that. That's just where I stand, though. I like the aggressive nature. They're wearing pads. No one's going to get hurt. No one's going to get hurt if you slap the helmet a few times. Go for it.
Well, I don't. I like competitiveness. I'm okay with some pushing and shoving and getting in people's faces. But I will tell you, if I was on a team that just lost and you're trying to plant a flag in the middle of my logo, I might get one of the Gators and try to run you over. Because that's so disrespectful. Here's my thing. Stop with this flag planting thing. Like, if you want to get in somebody's face or you want to jaw a little bit, I understand. I'm okay with that kind of stuff. But that, is just going to make everybody upset.
That's why they do it.
Obviously. And you're trying to be disrespectful to the team.
Yep.
And I'm not a fan. I don't like that kind of stuff. I don't think it's... I don't know. I don't like rubbing things in people's faces when they've lost, especially when it's a hard-fought match. I mean, you're playing against your rival team, and I know you hate each other, and that makes sense. And I support that. I'm fine with having rivalries because I think it's awesome. Rivalries, they're good, but I don't like people being disrespectful. I'm in the mode of respectfulness in all categories as much as you can. Now, again, there's nothing wrong with being a little chimey and talking some trash. I'm okay with that kind of stuff because that's part of the game. I mean, Jordan did it, Reggie Miller did it. Like, lots of players do it. Tom Brady did it. Everybody does it. But, again, at the end of the game, you still see those players shake up with their opposite, the person they were just talking trash to.
Sometimes. The bad boy Pistons didn't.
Well... Yeah, that's true.
And here's my thing. I 100% agree with you. And that's me putting on my coach's hat. Like, from a coach perspective, from an adult perspective, absolutely. From an entertainment perspective, I do enjoy being entertained. And them planting the flags on the field, the thing is, in my opinion, if you don't want their flag being planted on your field, win the game. That should be all the extra motivation you need for that next go-around. And when you're talking college sports, like I said before, you're talking 18 to 22-year-olds. I mean, these are kids fresh out of high school. They're still immature. I almost expect this. Now, if they had some respect about them, if they did go up, shake the hands of their opponents, take their losses like men, treat their wins like men, to me, that's an outstanding young man. And that's a great representation of their coaching staff.
Young man. You sound like an old fart over here.
I am old, man. I don't know what to tell you. But I take the perspective of a fresh 18, 19, 20-year-old in college. You're hyped, and especially a game like Michigan, where you've lost to Michigan 4 years in a row. You have seniors on that staff who that entire week up to it. I mean, you see all the propaganda and stuff that they put up with that. Like, they X out all the M's and this is rivalry week. They do not like Michigan. Right. And Michigan does not like Ohio State. And so if you're going up against that opponent of whom you have no respect for, why are you going to show respect in the end? You know what I'm saying?
I get it.
That's the entertainment perspective. As a coach, yes, lose with dignity, win with respect, win with class.
Yep. So, to me, it's why not get some lighter fluid and light the emblem on fire? I mean, it's the same idea. That's about the same concept.
That's not the same. That's taking a little far.
Now, here's a question. Those people that got into the skirmish, should they be suspended for a game?
Well, I mean, those people who got into the skirmish was like 60% of each team.
Right. So you basically have to cancel the game. There's people that are calling for that, but I don't know how you do that effectively and not affect the game. I mean, like you said, it's a rivalry. I think both Michigan and Ohio State, I don't know about the other teams, but Michigan and Ohio State were fined by Big Ten $100,000 apiece.
Yeah.
It's not.
I mean,
that's
what
something.
The punishment. Just like the teams themselves are making all the money in these scenarios. I know they have the new ways of paying players and stuff, but they're making all the money. Ultimately, if your coaching staff is teaching its players, coaching its players to behave in a manner like this, I'm not saying they are on purpose to do that, but obviously you're leaving out the respect part when you're coaching these boys. Otherwise, they wouldn't have done it. then your program as a whole should be the one to pay the penalty, pay the fine, and you as a head coach should be the one perhaps to go back, look at the film, see who started it, and give them the punishment yourself.
Sure.